This Todd-versation is brought to you in part by Produce Careers with promotional consideration from Calavo Growers and Volcano Produce.
Hey everybody, how you doing today? Welcome. Glad you're here hanging out on Todd-versations all over this big planet of ours, this big rotating rock. I appreciate you being here. Give us your time and consideration. I have somebody here today that I'm excited about. This is going to be a fun conversation. This cat is doing some big things in a big way, and I'm looking forward to sharing his journey and what he's about. He's a filmmaker, he's a writer, he's a farmer, he's helping others change the world. He's an advocate, which I can't wait to get into. He's the owner-operator of Brandywine Creek Farms. He's known as the punk rock farmer. We're going to find out what that's all about, too. Please, everybody, give it up and welcome Jonathan Lawler. Dude, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, man. I appreciate you taking time out of this cold winter months and hanging out for me for a little while and telling people what you're up to, because you came to me via my team and they're huge fans of yours, and they're like, you gotta check this guy out. So I started checking out what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're about. It's like, I'm loving this, man. I'm loving what this guy's doing. He's stirring up the pot. He's having hard conversations. He's saying things to make people think. I'm like, this guy's got to get on the platform with me. I'm digging this. So I appreciate you being here and hanging out. Like I do with everybody, brother, I always ask everybody to kind of give their little journey and bio. I could read it, but it sounds so goddamn campy when I do it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think it's better coming from your heart than mine anyways. So if you wouldn't mind, just give everybody a quick little 411 and we'll dive in and make this bad boy flow.
Well, I'm a proud born and raised Hoosier. I farm here in central Indiana. Our farm is located about 30 miles east of Indianapolis. In 2016, I transformed we had a large scale vegetable production farm, and we flipped that and turned it into a nonprofit. And I got into hunger advocacy. I was actually pretty angry seeing the state in which our country's in versus what we do as farmers. Something I tell people all the time, the hunger problem's been solved, and it's been solved by us American farmers. We grow enough food to feed the planet 3 times over, yet we still have hungry people in this country, and there's got to be something to that. It's logistics, it's politics, it's everything else, and the people who suffer who are going hungry.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Well, I'm going to get into this, and certainly a part of the conversation I want to have with you, but I got to come alongside what you said. Quite frankly, brother, we just do not value food in this country like we should. We have been taught that simple is easy and easy is good. And it doesn't matter what the short game or the long game is. It's just like about that convenience. And it is a death sentence in a lot of ways to our country. And I'm looking forward to kind of getting into that with you a little bit. Before I do, got to get to the main question though. Question number 1, I got to throw at you. All right. How'd you get the name Punk Rock Farmer? Because it's just not like something you woke up one day and go, hey, honey, I'm going with this. It don't work that way.
Yeah,
it came to you. I'm 100% positive.
I don't know how punk that would be to name yourself that. No,
exactly.
Actually, I'm pretty proud of who decided to bestow that on me. It was bestowed on me by grade schoolers in the inner city of Indianapolis. There was a friend of mine runs an amazing community center. He was brought in to help shut the community center down. And in the course of 2 years, he revitalized it. And he was trying to get an urban farm or urban garden going. And he kept dealing with, an extension office and people from the mayor's office. And people were talking about feasibility studies. They were talking about, what we need to do to get it going. And he asked me, he said, how feasible is this? I said, well, do you have soil tests? And he said, yeah. I looked at him. I said, when do you want to plant? And he goes, I'd like to plant this spring. And I said, well, then I'll get my equipment out here. And we took 2.5 acres. He told me there'd be a lot of kids there from the inner city that had never seen a tractor or anything like that. And so I brought out 2 tractors, one of which had no business on 2 acres because it was too big, but we wanted the kids to see it.
Yeah, look cool.
It could have turned that ground over in 20 minutes, but we decided to make it something. So we pulled up in our big diesel trucks. And we were actually playing Misfits. The Misfits were playing over the radio. And I had longer hair, but I keep the sides of my hair short. So long, frizzy hair. And I was wearing a Misfits shirt, the sleeves cut off, but I had on jeans and boots. So the kids were kind of like, that's kind of different. You know, they expect a farmer to show up in flannels and whatever else. And they started calling me the punk rock farmer. Well, there was a reporter there covering the story, and she actually ran with that. And she was an Indianapolis Star reporter, and it made the front page of the Indianapolis Star on Thanksgiving. But the AP picked it up, and it also made the front page of the USA Today that Thanksgiving weekend.
Well,
so there are quite a few people found out about it. Somebody had made the Facebook page, kind of following me, and then she said, "Hey, there's a lot of people starting to follow this. You guys should really maybe think about taking it over and running a nonprofit farm, Brandywine Creek Farms, a faith-based organization." There were things as the executive director that I couldn't say, but there were things as the punk rock farmer that I could.
Yeah.
So I used that platform to express how I really felt. And, you know, it's been a great journey because it's taken me around the country, and a lot of people that I have no business meeting and rubbing shoulders with, I've been able to do so. So
I love it, dude. I think it's a great story. And since you didn't do it yourself, then you can't get in trouble. Like, your mom's not going to get mad at you for saying, coming up with that. That's not going to be a bad one. You're right.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you check the boxes to cover your ass. I love that.
Yep.
I absolutely love, dude. That's great. I can only imagine that the kids, and once that stuck with the kids, I could just in my own eyes, mind, see them, how happy they were they came up with that name. Just it doesn't matter how big the tractor was at that point. Naming you the punk rock farmer probably was the biggest part of the day, if I was guessing.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
I would think so. It's super cool. Well, let's get into it a little bit. I want to talk about your farming because it's unique in what you're doing. I want to kind of back it up a little bit. You started growing, you're farming organically back in 2012, and then you converted back to conventional ag. So I guess got to ask, why'd you switch back a little bit? And
I was conventional, and I switched organic in 2012.
Okay. And then you switched back to conventional farming later on?
Yes.
Right on. Okay. So I got to ask, why the switch back, but also too, if you wouldn't mind, tell us what you're growing today too, so we can frame that up for everybody.
So we're actually transitioning into livestock, going very livestock heavy.
Nice.
And we were primarily a tomato and melon grower.
Okay.
But we would grow, well, for us, what we considered on the smaller scale was peppers, zucchini, and cucumbers. We do like 6 acres of cucumbers, and I don't really know acreages on some of the plants. We just go by plant count. But with like our peppers, we would typically do between 100,000 and 164,000
That'll keep you hopping.
Bell peppers. But with tomatoes, we were typically planting upwards of 800,000 fresh market plants.
Wow.
So we had a labor force of 30 people to keep that going. So,
well, yeah. And all those commodities is like, you go look at them on a Tuesday. It's like, oh, they're getting ready. And you wake up Wednesday, like, oh shit, they're already gone. It's like, we're a day behind.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. People don't understand is that, as you have fruit setting, you have fruit that's getting ready to set. And once you start picking, I don't know if there's true science behind it, but once you start picking, it's like the plants, even your hybrids, we grow a lot of celebrities, and those seem to still throw a couple of pounds of tomatoes every week, even after their initial set. So
yeah. They keep coming. I'm telling you. Like I said, that those fruits and veg are a challenge. I mean, because I know guys that are doing the same thing, and it's just like, we thought it was going great, and then all of a sudden the plants decided to blow up on us. And
absolutely.
So talk to me a little bit about, why you changed, from being a for-profit farm to a nonprofit organization.
So we didn't have a plan on changing to a nonprofit organization. That was never in our vision. The vision was we were just going to take 1 year, and it initially started out as we were going to do a couple of acres. And then the more we kind of researched hunger that winter, and I started talking to food banks and soup kitchens and community centers, and fresh food was always an issue. They never had it.
Nope.
So we decided to take 1 year and dedicate the full force of the farm to seeing how big of a dent we could put into hunger. Our goal was to grow 500,000 pounds of produce that first year to donate.
Wow.
And we missed our goal by, I think, 50,000 pounds, 50 or 60,000 pounds.
Right.
We were close, but not quite there. So yeah,
That's awesome.
and then
So go ahead.
we had a guy that read about us in the Huffington Post, no less, out of Massachusetts he came out and wanted to tour the farm. He had a bodyguard, if that tells you the kind of money this
Wow.
dude had.
I like it.
And wanted to know how he could help us become a for-profit or a nonprofit to continue doing this. And he saw that we were educating people at the farm as well. And he said, if you can come up with a model, I would like to help fund it. And from there, we hired an attorney. He did all the nonprofit stuff, and
Sure,
we became a nonprofit farm.
Thanks for joining the Todd-versation. And now, a word from our sponsor. At Produce Careers, we are in the people business. Thanks for listening to Todd-versations. As your trusted executive search firm for the fresh produce, food processing, and agribusiness industries, we focus on outcomes. With over 80 years of combined industry expertise, with our global networks, we have the tools and the skills to identify top talent for your organization's strategic hiring needs. Our relationship-driven approach and proven recruitment process deliver the right candidates at the right time. At Produce Careers, we know each hire is an investment. Whether you're looking for the perfect candidate or searching for your next challenge, call or email us today and let us partner with you.
Wow. So I mean, are you solely surviving now, financially based on donations?
No, actually, I do a lot of things on this. I'm as an advocate, I do speaking engagements.
Sure.
I do stuff like that. I help a lot of people with media, not just social media. I help them in the realm of the media world, especially if they're in an industry. Anybody in livestock, media can be hard on them at times. So I'm used as a consultant quite often on that front. So
yeah, in today's world, you got to have a sidearm to navigate the media. I think in a lot of ways, you don't know who's coming, where they're coming from.
Actually, we have actually kind of ceased our nonprofit work operations simply because running a farm with a board is difficult. Wanting to do things to actually help people, but waiting on funding to come in and things like that, that's also difficult. But my punk farmer media side, with the filmmaking, working consulting, has actually really helped me able to do things that we can just pay for it ourselves. We don't have to wait. And I find that we're more effective that way.
Dude, I love it. I mean, what a great...
I have a lot of people contact me all the time. Hey, how do I start a nonprofit farm? My very first question I ask them is, are you a farm? And if the answer is no, I tell them don't do it. I'm not trying to discourage them or be a gatekeeper, but you've got to know what you're doing when it comes to this type of stuff. You've got
100%.
You just can't. Now, if you're going to do a community garden, that's one thing, but it's another thing. If I had a guy contact me out of Tennessee that says, well, I got 60 acres. I'd like to turn it all into this. Okay. Do you farm? No. Can you hire a farm? Well, I was just going to work off a volunteer basis. No, that doesn't work because volunteers, they like, when you ask for volunteers on Facebook, they like to like that. They're like, that's great. I like it. But as far as them showing up, for every one that liked, or for every 100 that likes it, 2 might show up. So,
yeah. If that, and they got to leave by 10.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. No, well, look, it's a great side hustle. There's no two ways about it. You're doing things for such the right reason. But you're right. This is the hardest job on the planet, man. And I don't think you're not discouraging anybody. A dose of reality. People's like, oh, I can plant, look, I planted some Gerber daisies in my yard. Look at them grow. It's like, it ain't the same thing at scale. It ain't the same thing. It's not the same thing. We have a 500-yard furrow. It's a whole different world and how to embrace. And to your point, we need more of you out there. We need more folks that want to do what people are coming to you, but they need to be successful at it. Otherwise, it just doesn't move the ball down the field, right? It's just,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally. Well, one of the cool things that you do, and I just read, we were touched on it before we flipped the cameras, I started recording. Talk a little bit about the jobs that you've created and who is filling those jobs, because this is one of those things when I started getting into what you're all about. It's like, I love this, man. This is more of what we need to uplift our global community.
Well, I can tell you that being the lack of training out there for folks that, that college is just not for them. That's just the way it is, and, I had a kid that that thought about becoming a welder. So, was he at risk? All kids are at risk at a certain point, but
Absolutely.
he was definitely going down a road that, running into trouble every now and then. And so I said that I'd show him how to weld as much as I knew. I'm no master welder. I'm a farm welder. I make sure that it holds. It's not pretty, but it holds.
Chisel works.
Right. And that was enough to get him so interested in it that he went on to pursue, he went through a course here called Ivy Tech, went on to, he actually began work as a welder and started doing some fabricating, and now works at a fabricating shop for higher end cars, I guess, the more custom stuff. I had a kid that was in rough shape, had never crossed the line to get a felony, but he had a couple misdemeanors and a couple things, and his dream was to and he grew up, and this kid grew up rough. He really did. Dad wasn't around a whole lot, mom was bouncing from guy to guy, but he kept he had one of those, he had a lot of empathy, even though he might be in a bad way. He made sure that people around him that were having a bad day at work, he went out of his way to help, and he was constantly wanting to learn and this and that. And his dream job was to become a deputy sheriff. And I was like, in all honesty, because of the run-ins he had, I didn't know if it was going to happen. And he had went to his own county sheriff and talked to him. And the county sheriff said if he could get some letters of recommendation, he would consider putting him in through the next hiring process. So I wrote a page-long letter of recommendation for him. A judge wrote a letter of recommendation for him, and he ended up becoming a Henry County Sheriff's deputy. So
no kidding.
Which now I think he's since left that and got hired on to a bigger department. So
that's so cool. And
he's the kind of cop that I want to see as cops. He's the kind of guy that's going to do whatever he can to make sure whatever kind of bad day you're happening isn't as bad as it could be. So
100%. Well, you said something, I got it, and I love what you just said. He had dreams, and every kid some way or another has dreams. And the problem is that sometimes life, their choices, their path, screw those dreams up, but it doesn't mean those dreams don't exist. And to be able to be in a place where you can uplift it, today's youth, and give them that little push or that little, kick in the chonies, whatever they need at the moment, to kind of get them a little more grounded and just remember that dream, it's got so much potential for them. I commend you, dude. I think that's phenomenal. I really do. I mean, that's a big lift. It's a big lift, but man, what a rewarding one for you to be able to look back and think, I can speed through the county now because he's not going to write me a ticket. I get that. But nonetheless, still to be able to look back and see what a difference you made because you invested in him and pushed that dream. That's powerful, dude. It's super powerful.
Right.
Yeah, it's super. Talk a little bit too, if you wouldn't, about, I know you're really active in the urban farming thing. You kind of touched on it earlier as we're getting into it. I don't want to gloss that over because I think that, from what I've understood and what you're doing, you're passing along a lot of knowledge out there. You're helping others, grow through the farming aspect. And I know that you're working with several different things. If you wouldn't mind touching on that a little bit, it'd be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, so I would go to places that were doing urban farming already. And a lot of times they were using, whether it was their organic methods or conventional methods, they were using methods that just weren't working well.
Right.
There was one that I went to, and just out of food safety alone, she actually would make this, the girl that ran it, she would make something that she called chicken manure tea. So she would soak chicken manure and she would just soak her chicken manure till it was similar to how we would put, manure on a field.
Yeah.
She would strain it, but then she would use it as a foliar spray on whole food crops like tomatoes and peppers and stuff like that. And I'm just like, that's just a food poisoning disaster.
That's not good.
And I just simply recommended, I said, if you're going to do this is probably good stuff, but maybe run drip irrigation and run it to the roots.
Right.
And then you don't have to worry about it. And she said that, and that's the thing where people, I was an organic farmer, so I have real expectations of what organic farming is. And she said, well, my chickens are fed an organic diet, so therefore they don't have the pathogens in their manure that would be bad for people. And I'm like, well, they probably have more because they're fed that diet. And not saying that that's bad, it's just their diet's more complex,
Right. Yeah.
The reason they're bigger and fatter is because of what you are feeding them. And it's not cattle, it's not a horse, it's a chicken. Their manure is known to host a slurry of pathogens.
It's got a cootie or two.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a cootie or two.
So it was being able to do stuff like that, being able to show them that when they're looking in a gardening book and they're telling them how far to place their tomatoes, but they're on limited space, I would actually show them how to do intensive agriculture.
Right.
And that way, sometimes tripling their yields because of how they chose to grow. Just telling them that your inputs need to be a little bit higher. I think that's what we do at scale on our farm. So
sure,
that's one of the beautiful things about it. The sometimes urban farming, I don't want to use the word hipster, but I will. The hipsters sometimes get in the way of like the actual people that need help. And we actually had there was a big nonprofit farm. They poured almost $1 million into this thing, and they couldn't even keep their chickens alive. They planted 40 or 50 apple trees, and they all died.
Right.
But they wrote an amazing business plan. And the whole goal was to bring women that were formerly incarcerated and have them be able to make a living by selling the crops at local farmers markets. The problem is they weren't growing it. They weren't growing anything. They absolutely, if you're going to run an organic operation, you've got to have people that are ready to go out there and cultivate and keep the weed suppression down, and actually know what you're doing and know what to pick for market, this and that. And I had a group that was helping fund them ask me to write, to look at it and give my opinion. And this was about food insecurity. So I don't care about hurting people's feelings when we're talking about hungry people, or feelings, more so their pride. I'm just saying, well, none of these people have any agricultural experience. They've got 15 acres that they're trying to produce things on. Everything they're doing is dying. And the farmer's market model to me is still a side hustle. That's not, that was very hard for us as a large scale farm to maintain. I think there's a point where if you're small enough, it works for you. Yeah. But there's that middle ground where they were at, where they had too many mouths to feed. They weren't producing enough, and they just really needed to. They needed to change how they looked. Well, it ended up going belly up, and there was almost $1.5 million spent on that. It could have been put into other initiatives that missed out because it was driven based on, this is a woman-ran farm. That was the worst part for me. They were like, this is a woman-ran farm for formerly incarcerated women. And I'm like, well, I can I can give you the names of about 30 women farmers or female farmers that would have jumped at the chance to do this, and they would have succeeded. It would have been a big deal. They would have worked.
Right.
But instead, you went with these people that came from the tech industry, and that's where they were from. They were from the tech industry. You know, one of the girls was talking to me. I was waiting for her to, when I was explaining to her how to do this and that, you know, I was waiting for her to say, well, I've got an app for that, you know, because there's not an app for everything in agriculture, unfortunately. And that's the thing. And that's what the frustrating part was for me, is that there were women of color who were bypassed over this in their own city that could have taken that and made it very successful. But instead,
it's like they're farming a soundbite.
That's what it was. It was all virtue signaling. None of it was really about helping the problem. So, because if it was, there were people that were on standby ready to do it.
Well, you know, look, ag has got so much airwaves now and so much investment money coming, especially when you think about from the tech side. If you take a look at some of the people that are involved these days, it's like, you know, I've sat in the room with guys that were from Tesla and Google and Yahoo and this, and they're farmers now. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's see how that, you know, let's good luck. I hope, you know, we want to see it. We got to keep feeding the planet, but let's see where this thing takes you. Yeah, no, that's unfortunate, but a great part of that journey though, for you though, to be able to have that experience, share what you thought, where it could go. And, you know, I'm sure that probably reinforced some of your belief in urban farming in some ways too. Like, what not to do. Like, let's not do that again, kids. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's take the examples that these other people are already doing and go off a model that works.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, you call yourself an advocate, which I think is great. So tell me a little bit what that means to you. And I want to get into some issues about that's out there in the farming, which I know you're into and I am too. So I'm looking forward to this.
So to me, an advocate is someone who I just advocate for farming. And when I say that, I don't put labels on farming. If you're an organic farmer, I'm going to advocate for you. If you're a conventional farmer, livestock, whatever it might be, you know, as long as you're following the tenets of keeping the planet, you know, tending your ground, making your trying to always improve your environment, not take from it. A lot of people say farmers are the first conservationists, you know, and if you're farming wrong, not only are you working against the planet, you're also working against yourself.
Yeah,
because you're going to put yourself out of business eventually. So, but just advocating in general for ag, especially in this world of, you know, I go to the grocery store and I see labels on everything, and I mean the labels are getting insane. You know, I mean there was a new chicken thing, and I jokingly said to the guy behind the counter, I think it had said humanely raised. They actually had a label for sunlight, you know, which, okay. But it was never fed antibiotics, antibiotic free.
Right.
The chicken was on a vegetarian diet. They made sure they let me know that, which they were probably miserable because chickens are omnivores. But, you know, all these things. And I jokingly said to the guy, I said, do you have verbally abused chicken? I want chicken that's been verbally abused by the farmer. And he just kind of looked at me funny, like almost like I was half serious. And I was just, because all these labels, they're all virtue signaling, because I've been to these farms, you know.
Right.
I know this farm checks this box, and this box, so it can get that label. And this farm, and the thing is, the actual farmers are the ones who are doing it. They're trying as hard as they can. It's the big corporations that are requiring them to check all these boxes. The farmer's just trying to make his living from the earth, like they've done for thousands of years.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, you know, it is. It's amazing to me how packaging intensive the industry is. When I started 1,000 years ago, like there were no POU or UPC code numbers for the organic space. We bought them all and had to go through filling out countless pages of paperwork back then to make it happen, and then overwrap everything and blah, 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 which is, you know, crazy in itself that you would take a category like organics and then overpackage it. That seems to kind of be like, I don't know. It's like eating French fries and drinking a Diet Coke, hoping you're not getting any calories, right?
Right.
It just doesn't work. But you're right. We've gotten to the point where because as I said earlier on in our conversations, we don't value our food as much as we need to. And so we drive these attributes in there to try to get some kind of value back, because it's all about becoming cheaper, not becoming smarter, not become better at growing food and producing better food, cleaner food. I say it all the time. Work with Mother Nature, don't be Mother Nature, and our planet will do a hell of a good job together. Right. Yep. It's when we start acting like Mother Nature is when we get completely effed up, where the thing's going to go off the rails. Because I'm telling you, I don't care how good you are not going to decide what Mother Nature wants to do. It ain't going to happen. It ain't.
Typically, when you try to guess what she's going to do on purpose, she'll do the exact opposite. So.
Shit, yeah. I mean, she's been winning for millions of years. We've been trying to win for 150, 200 years, right? And we take a look at agriculture, what agriculture was 100 plus 150 years ago to what agriculture is now. We've made a complete morph of what it is. I mean, some for the good, some for the bad. Let's be honest, right? Not everything that we're doing in agriculture is great, right? But at the end of the day, I always say, and I think you would agree with me, that my first priority was always get somebody to go eat an apple. My second job was to convince you to eat the organic one. But if I got the first one right, I always had potential for the second one. If you don't get the first one right, we're all going uphill, right? And I think that's where we have to get our head wrapped around. So, I know food insecurity is a big one, and I want to drill into that a little more, but I want to make sure I throw this question out to you. It's like, what are some of the big ag issues, that you are passionate about? Some of the things that really, that excite you, concern you, et cetera.
So that excite me is that young people are starting to get more involved. The concerns are some of them get information that aren't correct. And that's something that we, of course, have to battle with. But the thing is, I do know that when I bring them to the farm and show them, a lot of times that works for me. As far as I'll be honest, I'm very passionate about protecting livestock farmers right now. If you look at the news headlines and the narrative that the media is pushing big time, it's all about plant-based, plant-based everything. And, I grow, that's what I grow primarily, and now I'm transitioning to livestock, but I don't think they realize, number one, that the hypocrisy around a harmless diet with being plant-based. They have no idea what we do as farmers to make sure that they get that perfect looking, and that's a lot of them. That's what they need. They want it to look like a textbook picture of a tomato or a cucumber.
Right.
And I'm seeing it. I mean, we're seeing legislation passed in states that, 20 years ago, they would have been laughed out of the state house. Now they're being taken serious. And I would like to see that corrected. I mean, if you want to be a vegan, I'm one of those people. I have a farm manager that's a vegan. He doesn't say anything to anybody about it. But at the same time, when you have people that are going on to farmers' social media posts and calling them murderers and rapists and all these kind of things, that gets old. I mean, calling somebody a murderer over an animal that's just a little much to me. One of my friends was actually sent a picture of a hog hanging from a tree by its hoof as it's getting ready to get, processed. And it said 2018 underneath it. And then next to it was the silhouette of a black man hanging from a tree, and it said 88 or something like that. And I was just like, wow. I mean, of course, he's, being black, he was infuriated that he would be compared to a hog or being compared to the suffering that his people went through to that of animal ag. But at the same time, the thing that bothered me the most is that they are co-opting real human tragedy and putting that on ranchers and dairymen and people who farm, a lot of which, especially in the South, are people of color.
Right.
And it's kind of disgusting, and it's getting really old. And I like to point out the fact that as a plant-based grower, I farm 113 acres. I will kill more sentient beings in a single growing season to protect the crops than you take 10 ranchers will in their lifetime, and that's, and then I'll have them say, well, I only eat organic. I said, well, if you eat organic, then that means everything that you're eating is grown by typically from an animal-based product. That's how organic works. If it, whether it's manure, blood, guts, fish, scales,
right,
intestines, skin, fat. I mean, one of the few organic herbicides that's out there is made from pellegrinic acid, which comes from beef tallow. And when it's used, I mean, that's cows died for that stuff to be used, but they seem to gloss over that. They
it's obviously a byproduct of the beef industry, right? For sure.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I have to go back to what you said first about the hog thing. I mean, that's incredibly aggressive, but I think too, it tells you the unfortunate side. It shows you the unfortunate side of social media, where anybody can be whoever they want to be. They can be Tommy Tough Nuts that they want to be on social media. They would never stand face to face and say that. They would never hold that picture up in front of that farmer and say that to him. Social media is a way for a lot of cowards out there to have a voice, and it's terribly unfortunate. It's really doing a disservice in a lot of ways. To your point, it's so harmful.
You have no idea how many times I've had people like that come onto like my social media and just say the most awful things about me. And I just, I don't ever say it, but what I'd like to say to them is, if we were standing here face to face,
you wouldn't do
I guarantee you wouldn't say that to me.
No, they don't. They cut and run, right? And
right.
Or they live under somebody else's name, or they'll come up with a false name and log in. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. It's exactly what we don't talk enough about, right? The impact of what that is. And the fact that, at the end of the day, this planet has been consuming animals and plants and fruits and vegetables and seafood and water and sunshine for way longer than any of us can count, right? And so I think that it comes to a point where we have to have this appreciation for agriculture as a whole. And again, it goes back to how do we go value our food, right? And I think that's a lesson that we're not getting. And to my opinion, and I'm really a big proponent of this, and I push it all day, all the time, is we got to start working with our kids, right? We got to start working with the schools. We got to start putting lunches out there that aren't the fish sticks you and I got when we were kids, right? With tater tots that were 8,000 calories of just, cardiac arrest, and start putting real fish and start putting real food in front of these kids and teaching them that flavors matter and food matters and where it comes from. Because that's really how we're going to change, in my opinion, moving forward in a lot of ways.
I had a school group here, and when they saw how watermelons and cantaloupes grew, they were shocked. And I was like, oh, and they said, but aren't they fruits? And I'm like, yeah. And then they said, well, fruits only grow in trees. Right. And I was like, wow, and you know what? If you're that if you're that far from ag, fruit grows in trees, apples grow in trees, citrus grows in trees. Why wouldn't watermelons and cantaloupe grow?
Right. No, I agree.
So watermelon trees would be super cool. I'd definitely do it.
I would dig that. That'd be kind of cool to have. You have a few stakes under those branches, but you're right. I mean, it goes back to, us not putting the right value around our food system. Again, we've made it cheap. We've made it convenient. I think that there's this, you're never going to see somebody at the retail sector say, I have higher prices than my competition. That's just never going to be. I don't care if you're selling TVs, you're selling cars, doesn't matter. You're never going to see that. And I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't believe that is the right approach we should take for our food. Yeah, you want to argue about, buying a Toyota Corolla all day, every day. You guys knock the shit out of each other, have a good time. But because we don't value our food, it allows these things, I think, to fester and to create this narrative, to your point, that it just becomes incredibly dangerous. And I think you've illustrated that in some of these conversations, that it is a dangerous time for a lot of things. And I just don't think food needs to be that. I really don't.
No. Something I'm always having to say is, I feel like there's room. It's a Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau says it, but I don't know if they actually mean it. And I love Farm Bureau, don't get me wrong, but I have to wonder, when you say that there's room for everybody, you need to show that there actually is room for everybody. As a scaled grower, is it hard for me to make my tomatoes at 80 cents a pound? It's not, because I'm using economy of scale.
Right.
But not everybody can do that, but they're still growing a really good product.
Yeah.
And, I think the more local you can purchase, the whole hierarchy of good thing of, first and foremost should be local. That's always going to be better, and know how the farmer grows it. People come to my farm and they ask me why I'm not organic. Well, there's reasons why, but that doesn't mean I still don't use organic methods. My personal belief is that farming of the future is going to take the best of conventional and the best of organic and make some type of weird hybrid to where you have scale, efficiency, but also, a better product.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe. I mean, because organic scales now, you can't look at some of these guys out there that, farming 40,000 acres, 20,000 acres, somebody like a Cal Organic, Grimway, those guys, Bullhouse, they're putting big acres, Taylor. I mean, it's out there to scale now. The problem is again, I think it has so much to do with the lack of value, right? Consumers.
Right, well, and that's true. I mean, I'm on the affordable side, so it's hard for me. If I go to a farmer's market, I don't really, if it's a farmer's market in Carmel, Indiana, which is a high-end area,
almost nice.
They're charging $5 a pound for tomatoes. What I do kind of get upset is when they set up a farmer's market in the middle of a food desert in a crime-ridden area where everyone is below the poverty line, and 1 in 7 kids don't know where their next meal is coming from. They set up a farmer's market selling at that same price point, and then say,
nobody wants to buy it.
Yeah, go compete. You buy 1 pound of tomatoes for $5 or 3 bags of chips from the gas station for $5. Which one's going to feed your kids? Yeah. So that's a difficult one for me. But I think if we get more people involved, we can solve that issue.
Well, I think it's about awareness, right? I think it's about these conversations. I think it's about pointing out, which is why I wanted you to come on, is about pointing out what you're talking about, what you're doing, to the audience that I've created. And it's no different than the things that we do at our platform here, whether we're talking to people at the school levels that are scratch cooking for kids and what it's done. I mean, because you can see the results, better attendance. There's, what amazes me is that these kids are sitting at the lunch table at school eating. They're not grabbing the pizza and running out the door to go play. They're actually sitting there longer, conversing with their peers. Right. So we can already see what we're doing from a positive standpoint. And you're right.
Being human beings. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the power of food is amazing. And to your point, working in the inner cities, working with these kids, I love to see some of the things that are happening in ag technology where you're putting, food close. You're putting food in the Bronx. You're putting food in, in West Side Baltimore. You're putting food in some of the South Side, Boston, whatever it is. You're putting food in neighborhoods that have no idea, to your point, that, watermelon doesn't grow on a tree. And I'm hoping that evolution starts to trickle down to this next generation of kids, because we got to start back there. We think you and I are going to keep the conversations rolling, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be these kids are going to solve these problems for us. And we have to get these kids educated on what we need to do. And again, let's not go be Mother Nature. Let's work with Mother Nature and come to a solution that's going to feed our planet, stop food insecurity. Because quite frankly, and I mean, I say this all the time, a nation that is food insecure it's no different than not having enough guns and bullets. It's it's actually worse in so many ways.
Yeah, it's easier to beat the enemy if they don't have the strength to pull the trigger.
Well, you got that. I think it's so talk to me a little bit about, when you think about solutions to stuff. I mean, give me your magic wand moment right now. I mean, give me some solutions that you would like to see ag embrace.
Thanks for joining the Todd-versation. And now, a word from our sponsor. At Produce Careers, we are in the people business. Thanks for listening to Todd-versations. As your trusted executive search firm for the fresh produce, food processing, and agribusiness industries, we focus on outcomes. With over 80 years of combined industry expertise, with our global networks, we have the tools and the skills to identify top talent for your organization's strategic hiring needs. Our relationship-driven approach and proven recruitment process deliver the right candidates at the right time. At Produce Careers, We know each hire is an investment. Whether you're looking for the perfect candidate or searching for your next challenge, call or email us today and let us partner with you.
Number one, I'd like to see farmers come together more. I'm just one of these guys that if you want to grow organic, then I want to support you doing that. If you're a conventional grower, I want to support you doing that. At the end of the day, an organic farmer and a conventional farmer have more in common than they do that they're different, in the sense of that they're dealing with the elements. They're dealing with, depending on what type of farmer they are, they're dealing with consumers that are, picky or demanding, or dealing with contracts that are hard to fulfill, or dealing with contracts going overseas. That to me is once agriculture has a unified voice to the public, it can help. I'll see ag advocates that will just absolutely rip on organic, but then I'll see like an organic ag advocate just absolutely rip on conventional. And
it's pretty tribal. I mean, it's the organic guy, the organic consumer, the organic producers, they believe real hard in what they do. Look, I've made my living doing it. So, I mean, I walk that walk every day. Right. And I get it. But to your point, as I said earlier, hey, let's start with the apple. Let's get to the organic one. I think that we've got to have to look at things that better the planet, look at things that are, what are the long-term health. There's a lot of things we get into, and I'm not going to peel back that onion and dissect, because I think we're on the same wavelength, because it's really about increasing consumption. Bottom line issue, right? Education and consumption. Those are such important things. And, where the planet takes us, where Mother Nature decides to go, we don't have a choice.
Right. Well, and when you say magic wand, I've been in the food insecurity space intensively for the last 6 years. And what shocks people is when they ask me, why can't these people get food? Hunger in the like I've been to other countries and I've seen hunger. Yeah. And hunger is hunger. Like that person is starving. But the funny thing is, like a good friend of mine is a doctor and he's from India. And he said it's interesting to him that poor people in India that miss meals and are food insecure still predominantly die of old age. Poor people in the United States, they don't die of old age. They die of heart disease. They die of diabetes. They die of obesity. Hunger in the United States is a symptom. It is not an actual cause. And whether that symptom is, 9 times out of 10, when we're dealing with the truly, they don't know where their next meal is going to come from. Right. They're also dealing with drug addiction, mental health issues. And our country has we do nothing for that. We not really. I mean, we're not doing it the way, and granted, we're a big country, but, being a political person, I think that if everybody just said, I'm going to help one of my neighbors, that would make a huge impact.
100%.
I had a girl that told me that she didn't want to support our farm because I'm not the only person in the farm. I might be the face of it, but our farm's faith-based. And she said if it was up to her, she would get rid of every church, every faith-based organization that is out there. She would take away their 501c3 status and tell them they can't do this anymore. And the funny thing is one of our consultants who worked for what is the name? They're not a faith-based group. They're just a gigantic. He worked for United Way. He was like their vice president in Washington, D.C. Right. And he told her, he said, if we did that tomorrow, the burden on our social system in the United States would bring the country down.
Yeah, without a doubt.
They actually do that much work. So.
Oh yeah. Well, my question is, what's the alternative, right? So if you want to get rid of all of it, how would you fill the void that you've just created by latching on to this stuff? Look, bottom line, people are inspired to do things, whether it's from their church, whether it's from their neighborhood, whether it's from school, whether it's from their parents. Maybe they read a book, maybe they got hit by lightning and now they have an epiphany. Who knows?
Right.
But if we don't stay inspired, right, if we don't continue to move the ball down the field, come up with the alternative, right? That's what I always say. It's like, okay, what's the alternative here? Give me I got it here. We're running it down and out. Tell me how we're going to do a button hook and how that's going to look. I'm totally cool with it.
And in all fairness, she had, I guess, a place that we were providing food to prior to them letting people have food. They made them come in, sit down and listen to a sermon, and then they would provide them food. And she made me aware of that. And I let them know that if that's how they work, we wouldn't provide food to them either. You need to give people food, whether they want your sermon or not. And I had to explain to her, I said, just remember, when Jesus, when he fed all those folks, he fed them first, then he did the preaching, and whoever decided they wanted to stay, they stayed. But other than that, I said, they're not following. Don't use them as an example, because you brought that to light and we got rid of them. So yeah, it was just there's so many opinions in this world of how we should be feeding people. I've had people say that cooking classes, I was like, why do you want to keep teaching cooking classes? But then once we kind of got out and in there, we realized, do you know how many people don't know how to cook anymore?
Oh, tons.
I mean, it's you hand somebody a zucchini and they just look at it and go, what do I do?
Right.
And,
that flips back to what you just said earlier about the fact that here in this country, it's diabetes, it's health disease, it's cancer, it's all these different things that are striking us down as a nation. And so much of it ties back into what we're putting in our bodies from a food choice, right? If you're eating zucchini, if you're coming up, you're putting the right things into the system, which is why I'm so hip about trying to go downstream to these schools. I think it changes everything, because if the food becomes better, the health becomes better. If the food becomes better, the climate perhaps, can become better. The environment, all these different things that can happen if we start to invest back in our school or back into our food system and put that value back into it. To me, I think it's one of the biggest lifts we have to do as a country.
And I'm all about affordable. I want affordable quality food, but at the same time, I think it's criminal. Criminal's the wrong word, but I think it's just awful that you can buy a can of Coke or a can of Pepsi or a big bottle of Mountain Dew for cheaper than you can buy one red bell pepper.
Yeah.
That's not okay. Because, some people are forced to spend based on what they have. And the fact that, and you look at how much food we waste. I mean,
for sure.
And I'm guilty of it. When we were contract growers, we didn't even mess around with what we considered a number 3 or number 4 tomato. They went into the harvest
gone.
Yep. And we just tossed them and they got plowed under. And that's not okay. And that's why when we went to this model, we would actually, those were the tomatoes we would sell as canners or what people wanted to process, because we wanted the number 1s and the number 2s to go to the people we were trying to serve.
Yeah.
So
here you go. I'll give you one you can put in your back pocket. Food waste in this country is the equivalent of every single American, all 330 million of us plus, old, young, all of them, throwing away 650 small to medium-sized apples each.
Yeah.
That's the food waste problem in this country. And that's amazing. That's an amazing stat.
I don't doubt it. And do you know what the driver of that is? It's the grocery industry. The grocery industry they're the ones who, this is the thing. I've had people say they think that like a fresh market tomato farm like mine, in their minds, they're like, well, the tomatoes that are cracked or not, that don't make the cut, you send those to get ketchup made out of. They believe that. I'm like, no, we don't. We throw them away. And they're like, why? I was like, well, who's going to take them? There was a time in Indiana that almost every county had a cannery. There was a cannery. Those are now I think there's 2 canneries in the state of Indiana left. It's just they just went away,
Yeah. Well, look, it's all about getting food from point A to point B, right? And it's food miles, and it's all of that as part of that equation. And it's about rot. It's about decay. It's about consumers have expectations and they don't want to see fruit flies in the grocery store. I get all of it, right? I lived it for a long, long time. I understand it. But your point is incredibly valid. It's like, what do we do with the excess? How does that work? Right. And the hard part is too, for a farmer, is that you put the stuff out into the ethos, right? You pick your number ones, you do whatever it is, you get the stuff out there. And then you've got to figure out, how can you afford for the labor for this, right? Because number one stuff isn't paying for picking up the pieces on the backside, right? It's a whole nother lift financially you have to deal with. So it does become a bit of a challenge in how we're going to do it. But your point's valid. There's a lot of food, that can find a different runway. But the problem is that until we start valuing the food properly, there ain't no trickle. There ain't no penny. There ain't no extra.
We used to.
Yeah, I agree.
One time we did value that food. I mean, there was nothing wasted. I mean, I know from here, my grandmother, when they'd slaughter a cow,
every part of it.
I mean,
every part.
Yeah, every part. And now it's, and I'm guilty of that. I mean, I eat the ribeye and the New York strip and the hamburger. That's what I eat, and but we've been conditioned that way, I feel like. And we need to get back to where we're using even more. I actually sold a cow to an Ethiopian woman, and she wanted to make sure that they got the skin. And I was like, the skin? What do you do? Are you making it out of leather? They eat the skin. Yeah. They eat everything. I mean, she wanted as much as the processor would give her on. I was like, well, talk to the processor. I'm sure he'll give you everything.
Whatever you want, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But no, look, again, it's a different time. But, I think about what pops into my mind is the 99-cent menu through some drive-through. Yep. At some point as a country, we have to sit back. We have to all constantly at one time. We all just thought about one time. It's like, how can that be only worth 99 cents? Right. And how does that, right? How's it? Because it's not being grown in the back room, right? It came from someplace through some process, and everybody's making money at 99 cents. That's where I get into this thing about value. That's where I get into this concern about, we're going to continue down this trail of unhealthiness because we're not having these, we're not asking, we're buying it for 99 cents. I get the economy, don't want to go down that trail. I get it. People, poverty, I get all that, but we're not helping anybody when we don't value our food system.
Well,
period.
I mean, I often said, what if every fast food restaurant if they and again, the logistics. So one guy, I worked in logistics, so, I owned my own trucking company. I understand logistics.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be super hard compared to some of the things that we try in this country. Is like every fast food place, they all put tomatoes and lettuce on their sandwiches.
Yeah.
Why not? Wherever your cluster of stores is, buy from farmers within 100 miles of those stores.
Yeah, I think that might be changing a little bit when you take a look at what ag tech's doing for retail. I think you're going to start to see greenhouses and things popping up next to grocery distribution centers. Now,
I would love that.
I think it's inevitable. That's what's going to happen. Are you going to have 50 acres of cherry trees next to somebody? No, but are you going to do tomatoes and berries and things? I think it'll get there as technology advances. I think as long as we keep valued on those commodities, because it's a big nut to spend to build a greenhouse and try to get it to scale. There's no two ways about it. So I think that's a possibility of way things may go in the future. I mean, I think you're seeing a little bit of it now. You're seeing Walmart invested in the greenhouses. You're seeing, other people getting invested. Costco's invested in the greenhouse space, trying to put stuff closer. We'll see where it goes. We'll see if it, what conversation. I mean, I think it's exciting to at least have that potential to your point, to put stuff that's going to make, again, hopefully it drives awareness, it drives value, and gets people thinking a little bit above and beyond, and again, puts that value back into the food supply.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's great. Give me something. I'm going to give you another crystal. I'm going to give crystal ball. I'm going to give you another magic wand. We're not doing crystal balls on the show. We're doing that, baby. We'd be in Vegas making money. We're doing the magic wand. If you give me some advice that you would give to somebody today, a young farmer coming up, some youth, somebody that's at the farm. I mean, what's something that that you kind of lean into?
I would tell them that they should listen to old farmers. Like the older the farmer, the more when he says something, you should pay attention. Old farmers have saved my butt so many times, it's not even funny. I have my father-in-law as one of those guys that I've listened to. I think that there's a lot of guys I see that get into it, guys and gals that want to be the biggest or want to have this or that. Farming, to me, what makes it so awesome is it's season after season of being schooled on how to produce from the ground.
Yeah.
You're going to make mistakes. I mean, I've seen new farmers make mistakes and just they're ready to throw their hands up in the air.
Yeah.
Tell them, like Roy Rogers said, if you're not an optimist, don't be a farmer.
Yeah.
Just take that as a learning. Learn from every mistake. Don't think that that's a failure, because it's not a failure. It's mistakes are never failures. They're just especially in farming. I know a lot of people will say, well, that can apply to anything. Well, it needs to be a golden rule in agriculture. If you see a mistake happen, then you better write it down and figure out what you did wrong.
Yeah.
That way you either don't repeat that, or you learn from it, do it better. So, and I'd also tell them that to find people that help them on their farm. This is not trying to sound cliche, but I've never not paid well to my farmland. Especially the guys who know what they're doing, because in agriculture, especially produce production, if I have a lot of smart guys that know what they're doing, that are out there working every day, taking care of the little things, I don't ever have big problems to take care of.
Right.
And trucking, we used to have a saying when it came to safety and maintenance of, take care of the little things and the big things take care of themselves. It's the same way in agriculture. That's why you surround yourself with people that are passionate about it and really would like to see it go. And I tell them,
100%.
Understand, this isn't a job, it's a lifestyle. Agriculture is a lifestyle. So
I agree with you. Look, farmers today, in a lot of ways, we're like the gunslingers of the 1800s, man. Right? They're the true bastion of the wild, wild west. They're risk takers. They're gamblers. They're riverboat captains. They're all kinds of that stuff. They're dealing cards all the time, and hopefully they get the right ones and they keep themselves going. But it is a very, very risky business. It is not at all for the faint of heart. That is for sure.
Oh, no. No. And this is the other thing. If you're going to go into scaled agriculture, you are new to it, you've got to have some type of mentor. Agriculture is the 7th most dangerous job on the planet. If you're working with equipment or you're working with big livestock, I've been lucky a few times. I've spent some time in an emergency room. My middle son has been in the emergency room 3 times, over farm accidents that were pretty significant. I've lost a few friends to farming accidents. So
it's legit.
They need to take that serious and understand what they're going into.
Yeah, but again, I think it goes back to kind of the theme of this whole thing. It's like starting to value food and understanding that, right? Risk, reward, all of it. It's all a part of that narrative. I think it's incredibly important.
Like I like to tell people this so that they understand how serious we are. There was a couple that they decided they wanted to get into cattle. They were constantly asking me and some other farmers questions. They had 2 dairy cows. That's all they had, which, that's awesome that they had them. They weren't milking them. They just wanted the cattle they'd eventually want to use calves from those cattle for beef. And they went to a livestock auction and they had bought a bull. And it wasn't, I've had Angus bulls, I've had Hereford bulls. They're not super, you got to watch yourself around them, but they're not ultra aggressive. Right. But they had actually bought a Guernsey bull. And he wasn't gigantic. He was about 1,500 pounds, but he was 1,500 pounds of pure
muscle
fight and hated everybody. And they basically, the guy from the auction backed the trailer up, let the bull into their pasture, and then left. And they couldn't get in there without him coming at. And they said, what do we do to calm him down? And I'm like, he's a bull. I don't know that you want him calm. I don't know what it is you're trying to accomplish, but you could have called a vet and had both those cows AI'd, and you didn't have to worry about
Having a bull
getting killed and then having a bull to feed, that you have 2 cows. You have 2. You're never your money back on that. And not to mention, I think they paid $1.85 a pound for this bull that, I wish I would have sold them a bull for that much. I mean, it was just, but the mere fact that they didn't understand
right,
the danger that they were putting themselves in, their kids,
fully.
That kind of thing. So yeah,
I love it.
Make sure you have a mentor. That's the biggest thing. If you're new to it.
I think that's, I think that's important in any aspect of life, having people that you can lean on, having people you can talk to, having people be a part of that, inspiring somebody, being a mentor. That's just, and being a mentor just means being a friend. Yeah. Not really a much fancier title than that. It's just a fancy way of saying that, but we do need them, and it's incredibly important.
Good ones, they're not going to judge you for the mistake. They'll probably tell you how they made the same mistake and what they did to correct it, because that's all a mentor is actually doing. Oh yeah, I remember I did that. This is what I did to fix it. So yeah,
it's incredible. I've had the good fortune of being around a lot of old timers in the ag space, and I got to tell you, it is a different demeanor. It is a different perspective on life. They look at the sun different. They look at the clouds different. They just, and they're a trip to be around. But to your point, they are a wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely.
And, I always say those guys up there, they've forgotten more stuff than the young farmer knows today. And they are, you're right. You need them in all aspects. You need mentors in your life, but farming especially. So as we wind down a little bit, tell me what's up, what's going on, what's next for you guys? What's next for the Punk Rock Farmer? I mean, you got your media thing, you're helping people get on their feet. You're feeding people that are hungry. I mean, what are you doing on a Tuesday for a couple hours? You get a chance to rest?
I have my first feature length documentary that I've helped produce. I'm told I'm the filmmaker. And it'll be on Amazon and in 2023. And it's actually about dog breeding, which is weird. I was actually asked to come and speak with a group of dog breeders. And I was like, okay, it's going to kind of weird, but okay, if they want me to speak, if they're paying me, I'll do it,
Right.
And I got there and 90% of the crowd was Amish. And I was like, oh, great. I'm speaking to a bunch of puppy mill operators, and the guy who had set it up for me, I pulled him aside and said, hey, I'm not a celebrity by any means, but I'm kind of known and I speak. I don't want to be associated with these people.
Right.
And he's like, I brought you here because you're the only guy that I know if we pull back the veil on this and let you see it, that you might do something about it. So I was speaking to this one Amish guy, very cool guy. And I said, well, you guys do puppy mills. I don't know what to say. I don't agree with those. He's like, well, I'd like you to come look at my kennel where I raise my dogs. And if you think it's a puppy mill, then, great. But I'd like to invite you to come and look at it. So a bunch of his friends also said, we want you to come and look at our kennels. Tell us if we're puppy mills, because we don't think we are. And I got to this first kennel and I was just like, what in the world? This is not what I've been seeing in the media. This is completely different. These dogs are socialized and happy, and they're not gigantic barns full of barking dogs. They're
right.
Smaller. And the more and more I dug into it, the more I see that these breeders that, and don't get me wrong, there are Amish breeders, and they'll be the first to point them out to you, that are running puppy mills, but it's not these guys. And one of them, we're touring his kennel, and I'm just like, this is nicer than my house, and he had just sold a dog to Jennifer Lopez because his dog, the type of dog he had was, I guess was so in demand. And trust me, her people checked them out to make sure who they were.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so then I figured out, the more I got into this world of dog breeding, I said, so there's a whole group of breeders over here that are recommended by one of the best vet schools in the world. They're working with them every day. The dogs are happy, healthy, wonderful dogs. And then there's this group of breeders over here that are running puppy mills, and they're bad. But the problem is the media is putting them all together.
All together, right.
And especially with the Amish, when not all the Amish are like that. And then we find out when we actually do these studies on these puppy mills and figure out where they're at. Well, they're mostly out west. When you get in your Missouris, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and North Texas. And none of those folks are Amish that are doing it. They're all
Right.
more rural people like me. And
Right.
then I see that there's animal rights orgs that are making millions of dollars a year vilifying these good Amish breeders while they're doing nothing about the bad English breeders. The English is what the Amish call, but nothing about these breeders. And then there's big corporations that are selling the dogs or selling products for the dogs that are making money. And in the middle is a group of breeders that have a lot of integrity, that take a lot of pride in raising these animals, that do not look at them like livestock, but actual companion animals. And nobody's telling their story. So
that'll be cool. So that's what
we
you
made
did.
this documentary to tell just their story. We're not defending breeders. All we're doing is we want people to see that not everything that you see in the media is correct.
Right.
And then after that, we have 30-minute, about 12 30-minute shows coming out about just going where I go and visit different farms, and we put that on Amazon as well.
I like it. You're going to be the farming Kardashian. You're on your way. I love it.
Yeah. I don't know about that, but
I think it's great, dude. Well, look, I love the fact that you're expanding, being able to do that. And I think what's great about it too is getting the message out there, right? Driving awareness, increasing consumption, talking about these things, getting these subject matter, especially from the farm side of it, about what's going on and what's important out there for people to better understand. Because as we've touched on in this, in our conversation, there's so much bullshit out there. There's so much noise in the background, constantly chattering in our ears. We've got to start taking a deeper dive, and especially when it comes to our food and understanding what's real and what's important.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. It's how we're going to win the day. Well, this is great, man. I appreciate you hanging with me.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It really has.
It's been a fun chat. I still had a whole bunch more to ask you, but I'm just like, hey, you got to come back. Come back. Let's do another one. Come back. Let's talk some more stuff. I want an update on what you're doing and where things are at. I think it's, I think it's great. So let's plan on it.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. I appreciate it. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Remember what I say it all the time, go inspire somebody. It's incredibly important. If the Pump Run Farmer has to put a little energy to inspire you, I don't know what to do. Do we send you, a monster? I don't even know what to do to help you guys out, but we've got to find inspiration, and food needs to be that. And so take advantage of this time, reflect on what we talked about, get some opinions for yourself, look a little harder, get involved, find out what you could do at your schools, find out what you could do locally, find out what your urban farms are like, what's going on in your community, where's your farmer's market. Get involved with food. It's how we're going to change this planet for the better. Change our food, plant a whole shitload of trees. I'm telling you, we're going to be in good shape if we don't do all that. Thanks for being here. Take care of everybody. We'll see you soon.